Welcome back to Twisted News, folks. I'm Theo Shaft, your guide through the weird, the wild, and the downright disturbing. Today's story takes us to the sunny state of Florida, where the sunshine's hot, but the headlines are even hotter. Grab your popcorn because we're diving into the gruesome tale of Wade Wilson, a man whose life choices make a haunted house look like a Disney cruise. In a courtroom heavy with tension and sorrow, Wade Wilson, known to the world as the Deadpool Killer, stood emotionless as the final verdict was delivered. The year was 2024, and the trial that had captivated Florida and the nation was drawing to a close. Wilson, 30 years old, had been convicted of the brutal murders of two women, Kristine Melton, aged 35, and Diane Ruiz, aged 43. The details of the crimes were horrifying, with prosecutors describing them as acts committed for the sake of killing. Judge Nicholas R. Thompson, a figure of authority and gravitas, addressed the court with the finality that only a death sentence can carry. The jury, after hours of deliberation, had voted overwhelmingly in favor of the death penalty, with a 9-3 decision in Melton's case and a 10-2 vote for Ruiz's murder. Under Florida law, the recommendation of just 8 jurors is sufficient for a death sentence, and Wilson's crimes easily met the legal criteria. The verdict was in Wilson would face 2 death sentences for his actions. As the judge prepared to conclude the proceedings, he asked the court if there were any remaining matters to discuss. It was at this moment that Wilson's defense attorney, a man tasked with the unenviable role of representing a client who had already been condemned by society, spoke up. The lawyer's voice, though steady, carried a weight that caused a ripple of unease in the courtroom. "I understand he has other cases pending here and elsewhere," the attorney began, referring to additional charges Wilson faced, including attempted escape from jail and drug-related offenses. These cases, while serious, would not alter the outcome of the day's sentencing. But it was the next words that shocked those present. "Mr. Wilson asked me to ask the court within whatever authority you have to get him to death row as soon as possible." The request was as chilling as it was unexpected. Here was a man who just moments before had been sentenced to die, now expressing a morbid eagerness to expedite his own execution. No plea for leniency, no sign of remorse, just a desire to end it all as quickly as possible. The courtroom fell silent, the weight of Wilson's words sinking in like a cold, heavy fog. The judge, maintaining his composure, acknowledged the request but made it clear that the legal process would not be rushed. The earliest the court could address Wilson's pending cases, the judge informed, would be September 16th. The date of his execution, however, remained undecided, leaving Wilson to contemplate his fate in the confines of death row. This final act of defiance, if it could even be called that, stood in stark contrast to the pleas made by Wilson's defense team earlier in the trial. They had portrayed him as a man tormented by drug addiction, a once loving son to his adoptive parents, who had descended into darkness due to his substance abuse. Letters from Wilson's parents, filled with sorrow and confusion, described a child who had once brought joy into their lives but had become unrecognizable as addiction took hold. Even some members of the public, captivated by the twisted persona Wilson had cultivated, wrote to the judge begging for mercy, citing his apparent improvement in health while incarcerated. Yet, none of this swayed the court's decision. The murders of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz were too heinous, too cruel to be excused by addiction or mental distress. The jury had found aggravating factors that justified the death penalty, including the especially brutal nature of the crimes and Wilson's prior criminal record. During the trial, expert witnesses had debated the extent of Wilson's cognitive impairments, but in the end, the judge ruled that nothing in Wilson's background or mental state could mitigate the horror of his actions. As the verdict was read, there were cheers from some in the gallery, expressions of relief that justice had been served after 5 long years of agony for the victims' families. Outside the courthouse, the families of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz vowed they would be present at Wilson's execution, determined to see the man who had caused them so much pain finally brought to justice. For now, Wade Wilson would wait, just another number in the Florida Department of Corrections, awaiting the fulfillment of a sentence he seemed disturbingly eager to meet. But for the families of his victims, the scars left by his crimes would never heal, even when justice was finally carried out.